Everybody, welcome to Big J's World, where we talk about anything and everything. Today, we have Miss Nichole. She has a book out named Haunt, Book One. This is your first book that you published, right?
It is. It's my first book that I have published and the first book I wrote. So
how long have you been writing this book before publishing? Did it take a couple months, couple years?
Oh no, it took about 3 years. I had the idea for the book for a really, really long time, for about 10 years. And I finally got to a point, it was during COVID, and I thought, let me finish this thing. I would write the first 5 chapters over and over again. And I was like, nope, I'm just going to push through. So it took about 3 years. I did about 7 or 8 drafts before really being satisfied with where it was.
Okay. So who was the main character of the book, and what was her background?
So the main character is a 15-year-old girl named Gemma LeClaire, and she is from a small town in Virginia. I based it loosely on the town that I live in. Her town is called Sage County, and she has a secret that she hides from everyone. And the secret is that she can see dead people. And also when they touch her, she believes she becomes possessed. Later on in the series, it'll morph into something else. But so she, after having a very traumatic event when she was young, when she was in first grade, she didn't see her gift. She doesn't like to call it that, but she didn't see her ability as a problem. She thought the dead people she saw or the haunts, as she calls them, were her friends, until one of them tries to make her like them. And after that, she realizes that they are not her friends and that she needs to protect her secret from the living and the dead. So this causes her to have a lot of problems. She has a hard time focusing in school. She shuts down a lot. This manifests as a lot of mental health issues. So her father is very worried about her and sends her to live with her grandfather in Sage County for her sophomore year. And that's where the book picks up.
Okay. So when writing the book, did the character Gemma was the first character that you wrote, or was it the whole story behind Gemma?
That's a very good question. I actually did not. The story did not start with Gemma. When Gemma arrives to her new high school, the day she goes to register, the day before, a senior in high school, Sophie, had tragically passed away inside the school building. So the idea for the book, it came from Sophie. I had this, I was a teacher for many years, and I just had this idea of this really popular girl, very self-motivated, very determined, very positive and optimistic. And when she passes suddenly, she needs something to do with herself, as she's, a spirit, and she starts to guide, some of the other students. That's where the story first came from, the very first idea. So the original idea didn't even start with Gemma. Gemma came in later in my brainstorming process, and I actually started writing the book based on Sophie's perspective. The book is from Gemma's perspective now, but I started out with Sophie, and then I kind of went, well, there's not, she's dead. So that's very limited. So then I started to do it between Sophie and then Gemma, and I would switch back and forth from their perspectives. And I did a few chapters that way. And then I got to the point where I was like, this isn't working. Let me just focus on Gemma. And that's when that kind of kicked into place, and her voice became the one that takes us through the story, and she becomes the main character.
Okay. So how did you decide on putting it in a school setting?
Well, I taught. I'm a school librarian now, but I taught for many, many years, for about 15 years. And the idea again, the one of the first ideas came from the school that I worked in. It was a really old building, and it was really kind of creepy, and I was doing my master's in education, and sometimes I would stay late. So when a school empties, I don't know if you've ever been in an empty school.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is eerie because anytime you have a building where there's hundreds of people and then all of a sudden they leave, there was just something a bit unnerving about it. So it just, again, it was just one of those ideas that I had that it just, I wanted it to be in a school. Like, it was very, I got a lot of creative inspiration from that creepy old school.
When was the school built?
The one in my book or the one in that I taught in? Actually, the one in the book is based on the one that I taught in, and it was built, I believe, in like in the book I have it in 1970, and the school was built in the 1970s. The one that I taught in. It has now been replaced by a new building. So I don't work there anymore, but it's
Yeah.
replaced. They replaced it about 15 years ago.
The elementary school I went to was built in the 1940s.
Yeah, that's old
And
for
it's
a
still
school.
standing.
Yeah.
Still brick building, still standing there, and really gave me the creeps when I went down because our cafeteria was in the basement and
Mm-hmm.
gym was in the basement as well.
Yeah.
So walking around that bottom floor, it really creeped me out. So I'm reading this book. Should I fear the ghosts in the book, or should I have more of a feeling for them as I go further along?
So, again, a really good question. I wanted initially the tone and the reader to be scared. I think people are naturally like scared. A lot of people, when you bring up ghosts or spirits, they're scared of them because it's just this unknown. So I wanted the reader to mirror Gemma's feelings, where she was terrified of the ghosts that she would encounter, the haunts. But as the story progresses and she eventually, has a turning point where her and Sophie starts to realize that there's something up with Gemma,
Mhm.
and really kind of catches her pretending not to see her and forces her to acknowledge her. And so that's halfway through the book. And then the tone changes a little bit because Gemma starts to interact and see them as individuals instead of just something to be feared. However, she still has a healthy dose of fear towards them because she knows that they can be desperate, which can make them dangerous. Because in my book, the haunts, as Gemma calls them, they're bound to their death location. So like Sophie died in the school along with the other haunts in the school, so they can't leave. So they have it, though, all things considered, not too bad being in a school because they have things that can occupy them. But she's encountered haunts that are in like a parking lot and they have been there for 50 years and they're growing, slowly kind of they're becoming a bit unstable. So as the book progresses, it does become more spiritual. However, it's still creepy because like half the characters are dead. And the second book, I'm currently writing the second book, and that is one of the things that I've had to really like think about. Like, okay, well, Gemma now is acknowledging the haunts, not all of them, but the ones that she feels that she needs to help. I still want to strike like this creepy vibe at times. So I've had to really kind of think about how to do that. But I wouldn't classify this book as like a horror story or anything. But it's definitely, I think, creepy at times.
Right. The haunt in the book, are there some haunts that are dangerous to Gemma more so than others?
So yeah, they're not, there's no demons or anything like that. I wanted them to be frightening in a sense of like, these were once people who, just like all people, I think when you are desperate for help, depending on that level of desperation, you can become dangerous. So in the first book, there is a mysterious girl who that ends up being the mystery that Gemma and Sophie and Gemma's friends solve because she doesn't, her name is Lucy, but because they don't know, Lucy doesn't remember who she was when she died or that how she died. She causes a lot of problems because she just wants somebody to see her and validate her. So she had been, kind of wrecking terror on the school. Like all the kids who go to the school and the teachers, they know that it's haunted. It's like, oh, you go to Sage County, like, oh, that school's haunted. But are they dangerous? If they touch Gemma and they, possess her, I don't know a better word for it, but when she kind of takes on their energy, they can, overpower her in a sense, and that can become dangerous. But one of the things that Gemma is going to learn how to do in the second book is to control that.
All right. Okay. That's going to be very interesting in the second book.
Okay.
So the gift that Gemma has, able to see the haunts around the school or wherever she goes, does she feel, does that gift carry more of a weight, or does she feel like really isolated because no one else can actually see what she's seeing?
She feels completely isolated. When she goes to live with her grandfather, she's happy for the move because her grandfather is the only person who has never made her feel like something's wrong with her. He doesn't know about her ability, although he has suspicions. So she feels very alone and lonely initially at the start of the book. And one of her big changes by the end is she does have a group of friends who she feels like she belongs with. So yeah, but no, it makes her totally feel isolated because she doesn't want anyone to know what she can do. So part of her backstory, and it's mentioned in the first book, and as the series progresses, it'll become more of a theme, but her mother left her and her father when she was very little, when she was just a baby, and there's mental illness on her mother's side. So she's terrified that people are going to think that she's like her mother.
Do you think her gift comes from her mother? Do you think her mother had the same gift, or was it just more?
So, yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but her mother is going to have a gift. And then her grandmother on her father's side is also going to have a gift. And between the two, it kind of like makes it where Gemma is like this. Her abilities are a little more prevalent and strong because she gets it from both sides.
Oh, that's awesome.
But she doesn't know that. She's not going to find that out until later.
Okay. So does she go into about her mom leaving, or?
So no, it's one of those things in the first book where she doesn't remember her mother, so her mom leaving, although she feels that void, it's not something that she dwells too much on, with the exception that she doesn't want people to think that she's like her mother.
Right.
And so there's definitely clues and hints in the first book about like the mother connection, but Gemma doesn't have a lot of internal like angst over it either. There's like one chapter in the beginning when she's talking about her mom, and she's like, I got enough problems to deal with besides thinking so much about my mom. Like, yeah.
All right. So you mentioning that there's mental health in this book. If I was reading this book and I was suffering from mental health, would this help me cope with it, or would it help me? Is there like any coping mechanisms? I'm asking this question correctly.
Yeah, there is. There's, I think that in some ways her ability, because it manifests as like on the surface to other people, it looks like she can have a mental health issues of some sort. So there are a lot of people who, like the grown-ups, who try to help her, and they're well-meaning, but they are totally missing the mark. So I think that alone, if a young reader, because this is a young adult book, although I have a lot of grown-ups that read it, but I think that if a 15-year-old is reading it who has some anxiety or depression, they could really identify with Gemma. And also, there's a school counselor who's well-meaning but is obnoxious. So I don't really have any coping strategies that Gemma does, because she doesn't cope well. She just completely shuts down. So it's really Sophie, when they start to communicate, where Sophie, starts to help her accept herself and all of her aspects. And in the second book, she is learning some grounding techniques, because she has a lot of anxiety, and it's a lot for her to deal with. So in the second book, she learns some more tips on how to cope with everything. Can we pause for just a minute? I have to turn my oven off. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, no worries. So let's talk about the writing process.
Okay.
When writing this book, are you more of an outline writer, or did it evolve as you wrote the book?
That's a good question. So I had this idea for 10 years, and I did outlines, but I never followed them in the end. But what I did is, so as I mentioned when we were just chatting before the show, I did a podcast where I interviewed people that had mysterious or paranormal experiences, and then I would turn it into a fictionalized short story based on their experience. And what that taught me, because I did that for about 2 years, is just to move the plot forward, was just to keep writing and to realize you can go back and change things. So when I was really serious about, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this book, the first draft, it was horrible. It was a mess. But I just kept going forward with the plot. And then say I was on chapter 10 and I would think, okay, well, in order for this scene to work, I'm going to have to change something in chapter 5. I would just go make a note. So what I would do is I had these note cards for each scene, and I would ask myself, what is the goal? What am I trying to achieve with this scene? Is it to add a clue? Because the book is a mystery. Gemma does come across this mystery and ends up solving it. Is it to help with the mystery? Is it to do character development? Is it to I would just try to identify what the scene was doing. So that was always super helpful. So instead of a traditional outline, I did have my note cards. And then I would just say, okay, well, where is this scene taking place? Is it in the school? Is it at Gramps' house? Is it in the diner? And then I would put who was in the scene. And that ended up becoming my outline. And then as I went through each draft, I sometimes would say, okay, well, these two scenes are kind of doing the same thing, so let me combine them. So I would constantly tweak it as I was writing. So, I guess I was a mixture of outlining and going with the flow. If something had to change, I would change it. I wouldn't just stick to this outline.
Right.
Because as you're writing, there are times where things just organically come up, or, you're writing a scene and you think, oh, that's a really great idea, but I need to go back and then change that last scene in order for it to connect or make sense. So if anyone is trying to write a book, that first draft, just write it. Don't go back and edit, at least because that's when I would get lost, is I would just go and edit and edit and edit. And I started to think, well, I have edited this scene or this chapter a half a dozen times, but I don't even know what's coming next. So I don't know if I'm editing it correctly. I don't know if this could just be a waste of my time. So each draft had a different purpose. The first draft was just to get the idea out. The first draft, there are characters that are no longer in the book. There There's, like just different. Gemma and her grandfather would play this game, and I took that out because it was just like taking up space, and I realized there's no point for it, even though I liked it. So the first draft, it was just like throwing everything at the wall and just kind of seeing what worked. And then after that, the second draft was fine tuning the plot. So each draft had a different purpose.
Right.
I'm a big believer in multiple drafts.
Right. I mean, get the idea down as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, it takes the pressure off as well. I would think, I would remind myself, like, I think the book is like 400 pages or something. I'm like, your brain cannot do everything at once. Right. It can't come up with the plot. It can't come up with all the characters. I mean, it can, but it's hard to do all of it at once. Like for me, it was helpful to be like, okay, this draft, I'm just doing the plot. The next draft is going to be focusing more on character development. So it was very purposeful, everything I did, but I did it my way, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. So out of all the drafts that you wrote, and then the final book that was published, which scene was the most emotionally or creatively that you wrote in
so there were a few. The opening is the prologue, and it talks about, so Gemma, she has this when she's a young child, she thinks that the haunts are her friends, and her father move into this is all the prologue. They move into an old house, and there's a little girl the same age as Gemma, and they think that they're best friends. And when Gemma starts to get older than this haunt, her name is Ruby, and her father starts to talk about them moving. Ruby wants Gemma to stay with her, so she takes over her body and tries to kill Gemma. So Gemma has scars all down her neck, burn scars. Wow. So that scene, I rewrote that scene so many times. The first line, like it was, and I workshopped it with a really good friend so many times because I was like, this is a really big, it's the opening. This is going to determine if people continue to read it or not. So that scene was tough, but it was also, I think I did a good job. And then the scene where Gemma finally acknowledges Sophie, that one was a hard one to write. I wanted to make it where, because the first part of the book, Gemma her main motivation is for these haunts at her school or anywhere to not know that she can see them. So she spends all this time and energy doing that. So when she finally does acknowledge Sophie, it had to be realistic. There had to be a reason why. Right. And then the last scene, it's a lot of action. And it was fun, but it definitely challenged me. And then the final scene, like the epilogue, that one was probably the most emotional because, it starts with, it's Gemma and she just has come so far and like is starting to accept all of the parts of her that she didn't accept or want. So I would say those 4. Yeah.
Was there anything that you were surprised writing this book or anything that surprised you while writing this book? Maybe, hey, that is a good scene, or that's a great plot that I just wrote.
Let's see. That's a good question. I think in the last few drafts, when I was really getting down to like, okay, I've worked on this for so long and it had my full attention for like a solid 3 years. It was the only thing I did and thought about. There were a few times where I would be reading and I would almost forget that I wrote it. And I would be like, oh, I wrote all of this. And, but yeah, there were specifically, there are 2 very minor characters, 2 haunts that are outside of an art gallery, and they had been there since before the Civil War. And their backstories, I remember one day just being like, well, let me give them a little bit of a backstory. And it was a lot of fun to write. They were killed by the first female serial killer in the United States. And she was a lady of the night and would, poison her clients to get their land. So I was just kind of like, where did that come from? But I mean, just when you write a book, it's surprising, I think, in itself because it's so much work.
Oh wow, that's funny. The Lady of the Night.
Yeah, she was in a brothel. The art gallery used to be a brothel, and
Oh,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe do a novella or side story of the
I
Lady of
know.
the Night.
I know, because those two characters and their people comment on them. They're like, we love Albie and Sully.
There you go. See, more of an incentive to do a little novella in between. Hey, here you go. That's awesome. So, without teasing anything or any spoilers, what should readers be paying attention to close?
What should they be reading? Okay.
What should they
Um,
be paying attention to while reading the book? Something that's subtle but should be like a
yeah,
good point.
so the names.
Hmm.
The names are important. Yeah, the names. I put a lot of clues in names. Yeah.
All right. I mean, nobody will. That's a good point. Huh. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, Gemma's name.
Mhm.
So her last name is Leclerc, which the first draft, her last name was Light, and my friend who he read the first draft and the very first thing he said, like the first page, he was like, "That's a little on the nose." So I went back and was like, "Okay, well, I still want it to be." Something like that. So Leclaire means bright and light in French. So, because, like sometimes mediums can be called light workers. So I
Right.
wanted, but yeah, the names, I would say pay attention to the names of the characters.
All right. So, how much bigger does the world get in the second book while you're writing? Are you staying just at that one
Okay,
town?
so
Or,
yeah, she's going to stay in the town. It's all going to take place in Sage County. So, Sage County is a fictionalized historic town in Virginia.
right.
I am originally from Los Angeles, but I now live in a little historic town, Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of history here, a lot
Right.
of old buildings.
I can
People believe
imagine.
people believe it's very haunted. And so within the school, Sage County School, the school that Gemma goes to, there are Sophie, who's the most recent haunt. Then
Mhm.
there is a boy or a teenager from the 90s.
Mhm.
There is a principal from the 80s, and then the girl was from the 70s. So this book was solving the girl from the 70s mystery, her murder. The second book is going to tie into the principal who passed away in the 80s. So it's going to take place in the school again. However, there are going to be new locations. There's a lot of scenes at a nursing home. So, yeah. So, but there's also like, I'm not really like, this is kind of something that's a little interesting. I'm not a huge person, a huge reader of like trilogies or ongoing stories, but I do like series where the story in the book is said and done, but the characters and the setting in the next book stay the same. So Gemma and her friends, they go to a coffee shop and they hang out there. So like that coffee shop's going to appear in the second book, but there's going to be new locations as well.
Oh, okay. All right. So just to tease the second book, what's coming next for Jem after she dealt with everything in the first book?
Well, so currently in the first book, Gemma knows that she can see and speak to dead people. She knows that if they touch her, their energy, their essence, their spirit, whatever, will enter her body. And she's with them. It's not like she is not aware, but she can feel their emotions. She can see glimpses of their life. In the second book, it's going to open up with a death, and the person is going, when they turn into a haunt, is going to grab her, and she doesn't know how, but she's going to be able to send them to wherever they go. So it kind of unlocks this additional ability that like at first she's not going to know how she did it. But she's going to think, well, if this is the reason for this ability, I need to figure it out. So that's going to be that is the opening. And as she goes to try to figure it out, she's going to
Mhm.
stumble upon a new mystery that she has to solve.
Oh, wow. All right. That is a great way to hook readers. Yeah, definitely. I'm like, all right, I
Thank
can't
you.
wait for the second. I'm definitely gonna get the first book. I'm gonna read it. and then can't wait for the second book whenever you decide.
Yeah, the second book. So I used to do a lot of like author events and go and sell my book at different things, and it was always fun. But I kind of reached a point where not everyone, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, when's book 2 coming out?" And I'm like, I don't know. It took me 3 years to write the first one. I'm working on it, guys. Like,
yeah, whenever it comes out.
Yeah, that is one of the things about being, because I self-published the book by choice. I didn't even try to do traditional publishing for various reasons, but that kind of is one of the downsides of self-publishing, because a lot of self-published authors can just like put out books.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm never going to be that kind of writer. Like, I'm gonna have multiple drafts. It's gonna take me a long time, and so that's just how it goes. So I'm working on it.
Keeping out, pushing out the first book, and then when the second book comes out, it'll be very exciting. Very exciting. All right. So a quick, fun, rapid fire questions.
Okay.
One word to describe Gemma.
One word to describe Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
Cautious.
All right. One word to describe the haunt.
Sophie specifically, because she's probably the biggest character of the haunts. She is stubborn and optimistic. She is precocious.
All right. Would you survive Sage County?
Yes. I feel like I'm kind of surviving Sage County because the town I live in is very similar. And most days I am surviving.
Mm-hmm. Coffee or tea while writing?
Oh, tea.
Tea?
Yeah.
Which type?
I like peppermint tea. I'm drinking a cup now. Yeah.
All right. And lastly, a night writer or a day writer?
Good question. I prefer during the day. I would get up early in the morning before I went to school, before I went to teach, and would write. And that was mostly by necessity. Because I would get home and I would be so brain dead that I would be like, I can't go work on the book. I guess I'm waking up at 4 a.m.
All right. So how many pages would you write to get this book out?
Sometimes it really just depended on the day. Sometimes if I could do 500 words, which is maybe a page and a half, some mornings that was successful. Other mornings I would be a little more productive. It really depended on the scene and where I was within the book. Yeah. I like to stop when I'm writing at a place where I'm like, okay, I know what I need to write next.
Right.
Yeah. That's helpful if you're trying to write.
Yeah. I don't know how Stephen King does it. I was listening to an interview and he writes like 6 pages a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense on the amount of books that he can push.
Yeah. I'm not a fast writer. I'm not. I know that. That's probably be why I can only do so much.
No, but we have such rave reviews about the book and stuff, so keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But again, if for the people who are watching, tell them where they could find your book and where they could follow you.
You can find the book on Amazon. Or you can always email me, and if you prefer to go straight to the source, so to speak, you can email me. My email is Nichole, NICHOLEC writes @gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a book and all of that. But yeah, Amazon or through me works. And you can find me on TikTok, it's mostly where I am, or Instagram.
Well, it's been very fun talking to you about your book, and I can't wait for the second book to come out whenever it comes out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Definitely.